leading the charge to make the 2024 Broker Carrier Summit possible, and we are so excited to have their support. In case you haven't heard, TAFS offers much more than freight factoring. It provides a comprehensive support system for trucking companies of all sizes, specializing in fast and efficient invoice factoring with the ability to pay carriers in as little as 1 hour. And TAFS services go well beyond factoring, offering a fuel card that unlocks major fuel discounts, flexible business loans that are designed to cater to the distinct needs of a carrier's operations, a dedicated, responsive client experience team, and much more. Blackbox Logistics is a 3PL freight brokerage based out of Birmingham, Alabama. Blackbox Logistics was formed in 2020 by 3 friends, Logan Dyer, William Graves, and Will Hopkins, in a basement office with the goal of bringing transparency around the clock communication and hassle-free customer experience to the table. Multi-service fuel card, the industry's first fuel card, was created by an over-the-road truck driver in 1978 to offer a safe, simple, and cost-effective way to handle fuel and trucking expenses. Initially, it addressed safety concerns of carrying cash on the road. Today, it combats advanced fraud with best-in-class technical and personal support. Sales-CRM is built for freight broker and agent sales teams. Manage your shipper prospecting and follow-ups. Organize your carriers in the lanes they run. HD Ships is a leading logistics provider specializing in sustainable and tech-driven freight solutions. With hubs in Reno, Phoenix, and London, we deliver comprehensive services, including full truckload, expedited cross-border, and intermodal freight. Leveraging proprietary technology, we offer 24/7 tracking, real-time visibility, and advanced automation to ensure safe, compliant, and efficient transportation. Our commitment to sustainability enables clients to offset emissions through carbon credits, aligning logistics with environmental goals. At HD Ships, we prioritize transparency, reliability, and exceptional customer service, empowering clients to achieve seamless, sustainable logistics solutions worldwide.
All right, so it will just be me today. Matt is stuck at the immigration office in Bolivia, so we'll have to get him back on next week to fill us in with whatever's going on there. It's a little side quest. Before we get into it, shout out to our sponsors, Sales-CRM, Freight-Centric CRM, Blackbox is a customer. We absolutely love it. Blackbox is a sponsor, freight brokerage out of Birmingham, Alabama. We've got HD Ships. If you're looking to be an agent, get in touch with Matt. And then TAFS, top 10 factoring company and our banner sponsor. Let me go ahead and jump into this one quick because I feel lonely and awkward being the only one on stage. Ryan, thanks for joining me.
What's up, man? Glad to be here.
Not much. Just
I think that probably like the immigration office figured out that like this pod can only have 2 dogs. And so either they realized in Bolivia that Matt is not a dog, which is what I think is probably the most likely scenario, and that he's just defrauding people, or they were like, well, there can only be 2 dogs, so let's hold this guy here for a while so that
that makes sense.
Ryan can get after it.
Shout out to the government in Bolivia for protecting the integrity of the podcast, because
really,
we can only have 2
dogs.
dogs.
I saw some of the clips of the other people you had on there, and it's good to know that that normally there's not any other dogs on here. Like Cam Ramsdale, definitely not a dog. Certified not a dog. I'm also glad to not be the fattest person on here since you've had Cam on here before. So like those are 2 things that I'm really happy about. Shout out Cam for being a certified not dog.
Awesome. Yeah. Maybe we should start a new thing, certified not dogs. You know what we did, the dog of the week.
Yeah, that's right. That's what, the dog of the week. Yeah. Certified dog of the week. Yeah. That's what I'm going for.
Yeah. We can just do the inverse of that. Well, also, man, hey, give us a quick rundown for anybody that doesn't know who you are, a little bit about yourself, what you do, how you got into freight, all that good stuff.
Sure. I'll try and, I can't really do anything too briefly. If anybody is, that's what, probably the only people who showed up are people who know me and want to talk shit to me in the comments. But I don't really do anything too briefly. I got into the industry a little over 15 years ago through bad luck, which is, I think, how everyone gets into the industry. I started my career at Echo Global Logistics. That's not the bad part. I had it was the Great Recession, as anybody else might be aware, and I had gone to law school and couldn't get any jobs or what have you. So I just ended up at Echo. Shout out to my boy Ryan Schreiber, who's like over at Circle Logistics, who was a buddy of mine. His cousin and I went to law school together. We were friends, hanging out, and he got me the job at Echo because I just needed a freaking job. So I ended up at Echo. I was there for about a year. Then I started a couple brokerages. I started 2 legacy brokerages, and then in 2016, I started a tech company focused on AI and natural language processing specifically, like in all types of applications of natural language processing. So Garrett, that's 6 shots for you, buddy. And other types of machine learning and whatnot. And so I've been on this AI journey for about 10 years now. For the last 6 years, I've been doing technology consulting for transportation, logistics, supply chain. So Metaphora, my company, works with transportation providers, shippers, private equity firms, freight tech companies, and we provide technology services and consulting. We help people figure out what to do with technology and then help them implement whatever those strategies are. And then I also spend a lot of my own personal free time, to the extent that that exists, working with freight tech companies, because it's something I'm passionate about. I'm just passionate about kind of like making the industry a little bit better place, because it's it's really, really broken. Like all these memes that Paul posts from Freight Caviar about how people have to take their laptop on vacation or whatever, and we all laugh about it. Like it actually makes me sad.
Yeah.
And so like I'm just kind of on a mission to make that not suck.
To make the industry
a little bit about me.
Sad. Well, yeah. So you've been doing AI since before doing AI was cool.
Well, it was cool back then too. It just wasn't as why. It was funny. Like when we were starting Freight AI, I had 2 co-founders, and kind of the reason the business didn't work is we didn't really get along. And I kind of know them before. Like I was the freight guy and they were more the tech guys, and that was one of the reasons business didn't work. And there's a lot of other reasons. There's a couple of other like more technical reasons the business didn't work that were really good learnings over the last few years. But I remember thinking at the time how AI was a buzzword even then, and how we were talking, people would say AI just like they do now as like a blanket term for a bunch of different things. Chad Olison and I talk about this a lot because Chad is a good friend of mine. He lives here in Austin with me, and not with me. We live in different places, but we both live in Austin.
Yeah.
We don't have like a sister wives situation going on, but we talk about how like AI really is like a bunch of different stuff. Like, natural language processing is really more machine learning if you want to put too fine a point on it. But yeah, I used to think it was a buzzword back then, and now it's even buzzier, and that was a bit of a challenge, but it's been a good learning. I mean, there are definitely people who are smarter about technology than I am, and there are definitely people who are smarter about logistics than I am. But I definitely have the benefit of having thought about and worked on this for such a long time. And even before I knew that things like natural language processing existed, it really like dovetailed with how I thought about some of the problems that I was facing trying to build and scale the businesses that I started. Or like in the friends that I had in the space, kind of like looking at their businesses and thinking about the challenges they were facing. And like what really the kind of like upper bound limit was to any type of efficiency or effectiveness we could gather from the way we worked. So yeah. So anyway, yeah. I mean, it was still cool back then, but maybe it was less logistics specific back then.
Yeah, it's always cool, but more prevalent now. Speaking of AI being used as a blanket term, one that I see quite often, and correct me at any point if I misspeak on anything in this realm. Yeah, I know you will actually. You don't even have to say it. I see So speaking of chat, I see automation being referred to as AI quite often. Two separate things, correct?
They are two separate things, but that's kind of like that's like saying you can use AI to do automation. You can use AI to do things that aren't automation, and you can automate without AI. Like it's not a Venn diagram type. They're discrete in the sense that you can use AI to do data insights that don't have to be automation. You can use automation. Chad's is a good example because part of what Chad does is robotic process automation. You can do robotic process automation without natural language processing, which is part of what Chad does, and is like a branch of AI. And so like RPA, but RPA is in and of its. So this is one of the things that gets a bit complicated for folks, and I certainly respect that too. Like I just happen to have been, again, like working on it for such a long time. RPA has been around for a long time. And it is a manner of speaking artificial intelligence, just like OCR, optical character recognition. Like everyone has experience with OCR in a sense. Like if you've ever taken a picture of a document and had it sort of like upload into the, like take information out of it. Triumph Audit does this as an example. Leverages OCR, optical character recognition. That's been around for a long time, and it's machine vision. Right? It's machine vision. And so it is kind of a branch of AI. And so there's these levels, sort of, if you will, that we build on top of it. So something like what Chad does is layer natural language processing on top of robotic process automation, RPA. What something like a company like Peruse or Upwell do is they layer NLP on top of OCR. And it just makes the technology more extensible. So yeah, sorry, that was a bit that wasn't exactly your question, Will, but yeah, I mean, they are definitely different things, and you can use them in different ways. You can automate using, you can automate using all kinds of different tactics. Macros is a form of automation. Everybody's kind of probably experienced a macro before, and so maybe they haven't. I don't know. Maybe I'm too old for that, but anyway. So yeah, does that answer? I think that answers your question.
Yeah. No, that makes sense, and I actually I appreciate the long-winded answers because it is a complex topic, right? So it seems most of my questions probably won't be yes or no. At least to me, maybe when I'm asking the question before your answer, I'm thinking it's pretty straightforward. Then you get into it, and it's just, man, there are so many layers and nuances to all this stuff. Staying on AI, but kind of getting to a different area. And this might be, you're probably gonna have to pull a lot of places for this answer. So where do you see technology? So before I asked this, I was on a call with I guess you'd call him like a business coach, somebody who had built a brokerage, sold it, and we were talking about tech stacks, and he made the prediction that any brokerage not leveraging AI within 10 years would go out of business because they wouldn't be able to compete just from a pure efficiency standpoint.
Mhm.
Do you think a statement like that has the potential to prove true? Or I guess there's a lot of, I don't want to say put a label on it, but fear posting almost, like
Yeah,
get
fear. Yeah,
one,
yeah,
put
yeah.
behind.
So I, there is a lot of like fear mongering around technology, and there has been for, again, like that's something that I've noticed over the last at least 10 years. And I personally try and push against that. Even though like I'm a huge advocate for technology and I'm a huge advocate for using it in your business, it 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 misses nuance in a way that I think is really is like really um important, and it also doesn't actually help further the conversation. Like the question is sort of what are the trade-offs if you do or don't do something. I use the example of Sears and Roebuck a lot, or as most people would just probably call it Sears, or Blockbuster. Like they're great examples of companies that like missed the boat on technology or like e-com or whatever it might be, and then they just like had a really slow, painful death. But it kind of depends on, whether that's like good or bad, or sorry, whether that's objectively bad, kind of depends on what your goals are and who you are. Over the last 15, 20 years, a lot of people have made a lot of money from Sears. And like, if that was what you were going, like if you don't care about building something that persists into infinity until the heat death of the universe, then like you kind of got what you wanted out of it, right? I mean, Jeff Bezos has said Amazon will die one day. Every company will die. It's a question of how and whatever. And so if you affirmatively opt into whatever the option is, that's all that necessarily matters as long as it aligns with your goals. And so I agree with you on that fear mongering point. And I think that it just misses nuance in the conversation.
Yeah.
That having been said, I do not think that there is a world where a brokerage exists in 10 years that doesn't leverage AI. But again, that comment in and of itself misses nuance.
Yeah.
AI is just in so much of everything that we do. Even not even like not even the generative or agentic AI, but like artificial intelligence is just ingrained in so much of the products that we use and the things that we do that it's almost impossible to imagine a way in which you could have a business that doesn't leverage some form of AI. Now, whether you use it, to your comment from earlier, for automation is a different story. This is probably 7-8 years ago now or so, like there was with maybe not 7 or 8 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, I was with like a bigger broker. They were like a top 20 broker. And they were talking about how the president of this business was telling me how like, Uber, because they did like temp control, like a lot of what they did was temp controlled and like multi-stop temp control, produce and stuff like that. And he said, like, Uber's not really a threat to our business. And Convoy's not really a threat to our business because they're focused on this other stuff. And I was like, hey man, listen, I just got to be real with you for a second. Like they haven't told me this at the time, but they're coming for that stuff. They're just working on the easier stuff first. Right. And so at some level, like technology is going to keep coming. It's going to happen. People are going to use it. How they use it is what matters, actually, more than what they use. How they use it and how they make it effective. And that's really the strategy difference. And then it's just a function of like chipping away. But I do think, and I said this to this guy at the time, I do think that at some level, like it's all a question of complexity and fragmentation. And I don't think, one of the things that people talk about all the time is that consolidation will come to our industry. And I don't think that it will. And I can talk about why if you really want me to, but I do think that for a long time, not forever, I don't think anything is forever, but for a long time, at least on the time horizons that probably you and I care about in our career, there will still be a place for the guy who knows a guy and like knows like, and that guy could be the shipping manager at some place, or that guy could be that flatbed carrier that's around the corner. Like it could be, but I still think that there will be a place for the guy who knows a guy, because the barriers to entry and the cost to execute a lot of this stuff is actually really, really low from a brokerage perspective. Whether they'll be able to effectively scale, whether they'll be effectively able to make billion-dollar businesses, probably not. But again, that all depends on your goal or their goal. Like if your goal if your goal for something like Black Box is to make it, a $20 million company, $50 million, those are probably within the realm of possibility for most of the rest of our careers without materially looking at something like artificial intelligence. But there's an upper bound limit to that growth. And I can, I'll stop talking for a minute, but I can talk about why if you want.
Yeah, I want to add one thing and then that'll probably make sense. So when I think about brokerage, at least from my perspective, I really separate into two categories. One being the enterprise level players where this kind of stuff is maybe more urgent. I don't want to say urgent, but they're trying to capture market share quickly. They can fund it. And then you've got kind of the SMB brokers, which it's not as necessary right now, where they're not as focused on that cost per load or the enterprise RFQ type business. Because again, if the majority of my book of business is SMB shippers where they're doing 5 to 10 loads a week, those tools might not be as effective where they are right now, as opposed to some of the bigger players with the top line revenue efficiencies and all that good stuff. So. But yeah, I think what you're saying, that there's only a certain level that you can get to like that without adopting some of these tools.
Yeah. What's funny is, so I don't disagree with what you said. I see it differently because it's all about this. It's all about how and why and where you deploy them. And there's actually ways in which I actually think it's more important to have them as a smaller business. I work with a lot of really large companies. Most of the companies that Metaphora works with are $750 million plus revenue businesses, in the brokerage and carrier space. And they're not as buttoned up as maybe I think most people think, especially from like a alignment of technology and resources perspective. But Will, like, I actually think that it can be more valuable to a smaller company because it's what I call broker math, right? So if you look at your P&L, are you familiar with what an operating ratio is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So for anybody who's not familiar with operating ratio is how much of $1 of revenue do you need to spend to make that dollar? So an operating ratio is if I collect $1 in revenue, I spent X amount of that dollar to make it. Most brokers that are trying to scale or that are at scale operate around a 95 OR. And it can be it can be lower, it can be higher, but 95 to 97 is pretty typical. That means for every $1 in revenue you generate, you only are left over with 3 cents to continue to invest in your business. 3 to 5 cents. So any lever that you have to increase or decrease your operating ratio, I guess, right? The lower the number, the better. The more elasticity that gives you. So it can be price elasticity. It can be meaning you can charge your customers less and still win the business profitably. It means you could pay your carriers more and, for like reasons, I suppose, like, get higher quality service, although that's a whole other conversation. You could pay your people more, get better people. You can invest in training. You can invest in other technology tools. You could hire another group of people. So I actually think that they add more value potentially for smaller businesses. And you said, okay, well, my shippers only have 3 to 5 loads a week or what have you. Yeah, but the variance in those shipments is greater, in which case, like, opportunity for, like, that's what generative AI and like large language models and are really good at, is taking disparate and different scenarios and somewhat normalizing them for process or what have you, or learnings or whatever you might call it. So I don't know, man. I would say in some level, man, like it could be more valuable for a business like yours. Now,
Yeah.
the important thing is don't do it just to do it. Like you've got to do it. There's got to be a reason to do it, and you have to have a strategy. Like I said, it was saying in like, you know, the exposition I was giving earlier, what matters is the strategy behind what you're using, not necessarily what you're using. Because if you use it for the wrong thing or in the wrong way, or maybe wrong is the incorrect term, if you use it without purpose or intentionality, you're not going to get value out of it.
Yeah.
It's like Sales Dash is a great CRM, right? Like Sales Dash is a really good CRM. Like, right? We both agree about that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't think about how you're going to use a CRM in your business, you don't set it up to be used appropriately, you don't train people on it, you don't think about sales process when you're doing the implementation, or you don't train your people on sales process and you just expect Sales Dash to take care of all of it, Sales Dash is going to be a waste of time and money, just as much as Salesforce would have, just as much as HubSpot would have, right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's well put, where a lot of people can see that in practice. So let me ask you this, based off of that statement, do you think that if and when a broker is considering AI a vendor, do they need to fully understand that the inner workings, or just what it's executing before they can use it?
They fully need to understand the inner workings. I don't know that anybody fully understands the inner workings of like, because ultimately what you're talking about, you know, we're still sort of like anchored. We're using AI to really mean this like generative or agentic AI type scenarios. The most important, in my experience, and what I've seen at Metaphora, what we see at Metaphora, is the most important thing is knowing yourself. Like, know your business. Know your business with the utmost care and detail, the most nuance you possibly can. That's definitely the most important thing.
So break down generative versus agentic AI. Keep saying those. But what's the difference? Biggest difference, rather?
And generative, oh my God, that's a really difficult question to answer. Einstein said, if you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it. And so maybe because I can't explain this simply, I don't understand it. I would say generative AI is a lot of the stuff that you've experienced with like ChatGPT or Gemini or Gronk or whatever it is you might be using, where it has like a prompt and response type feature. An agent can take that and then it's sort of like work independently. But it can also do other things. So like AI agents can do, I find it easy. Anybody who's listened to anything I've done before here has heard me say this before, or follows me on LinkedIn has heard me post about this before. I find it easiest to think about artificial intelligence, regardless of whether they're agents or generative or otherwise, honestly, the same way you think about people. And so an AI agent is a worker. What's something that your people can do? Your people can make phone calls. Your people can send emails. Your people can read emails. Your people can update a TMS. Your people can do other things. They can manage other people. They can distribute work to other people. And so agents are like leveraging large language models and generative AI, but they are workers. So it's sort of like a level of abstraction on generative AI.
Okay. I think I'm following. Should make sense.
I don't know that I'm following, to be honest with you. Like I said, man, maybe I don't understand it.
Yeah, I mean, I have questions pop up as you're talking about the time you're finished. There's like 13 different questions trying to think of the last. So put it this way, now we have the iPad kids growing up, right? And they grew up with technology, and they use tech more, right? So do you see kind of a similar trend, say like in a decade, 15 years, where, kids are in school and they're using ChatGPT for all their homework and stuff? Do you see that affecting the workforce, them being just quicker to be using it a lot more?
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
Like undoubtedly. I mean, it's the same way that like boomers versus Gen Xers versus millennials can use the internet. I'm a little bit older than you. There was a time in my life where I didn't have a computer and I didn't have the internet. And I also had consciousness. There was a time in my life where like I had to go to when I started college, not everyone had a computer. By the time I started law school, everybody had to have a laptop. Like it was required. You had to have a laptop. And so, there's an interesting maturation that happened, I think, with people who are like my age, plus or minus 2 or 3 years. And because there's a comfort, but there's also there's also like a level of understanding of the abstraction that is technology. So, but yeah, I mean, the creative. I was talking about Cam. I was just talking shit about Cam as we were getting started, Cam Ramsdale, and so he and I were together about 6 months ago, and we're both very creative when it comes to thinking about these problems. It's part of the reason we became friends. Or really, I'm his friend, but he's not mine. I don't, it's like I'm too good to be friends with him, but he doesn't have very many of them. So,
yeah,
I kind of feel bad for the guy. I spend time with him and hang out with him. But anyway, so, I give him all his good ideas too when it comes to, like, he owes his whole career to me, if you were being honest. But so he and I were talking about this, and we were looking at, he was showing me a mock-up of something that he was doing. And I was like, hey man, that's great and all, but like, why are these fields here? Think about it in the context of like the new technology we have. Why do we even have that field anymore? That field is actually useless in the context of where technology is today. And then like that conversation kind of evolved to the fact that like even me and him, who are kind of more forward thinking in how we can apply these things, we still have 15, 20 years of experience in our career. And like, there's only so much you can do to kind of flush that from your mind, right?
Yeah.
And think fundamentally differently about how to apply this technology to these problems. So these kids will come up with an intuitive understanding of this technology that will allow them to think fundamentally differently about the problems and how to apply technology to those problems than any of us really can. And that's, I think, really exciting or interesting. Like one of the companies I work with right now is a company called Maestro that we're working on. And it's doing capacity orchestration. And I won't go into the details. But I was talking to the guy who runs the business, Nick Dangles, who you've had on the show before, who I work with on a lot of different things. And I was like, we need to hire a product owner who comes straight out of school, straight out of college, maybe even straight out of high school, and who has no idea how business even works, but is like dyed in the wool of these newer technologies to just come up with the craziest shit they can. And then we can be like, cool, here's all the reasons that won't work, but like, let's work towards the middle of like something that would work based on your kind of like core thesis or philosophy there. So yeah, man, there's like not a world where technology isn't, now we actually have the problem. We have a different problem. We have actually a problem of technology velocity that's inverted from where technology has been recently. We're going to bump up against a problem of technology, of systems changing too quickly, potentially. Like I was talking, we're doing a lot of like AI development at Metaphora. Like we're piloting it with a couple of customers and we're doing some really cool and interesting stuff. And so the velocity of software development is just like exponentially increasing. And so we're going to get to the point where like we can push so many PRs. Sorry. we can ship so many features in any given release or sprint that like it actually might be too much for users to keep track of, right? Because like we could just fundamentally at some point soon, we'll be at the point where we can change an entire application in a sprint, basically. How, as a human user, who by the way are still going to remain in the loop, AI will just create white space for us. The story of technology has always been creation of white space and new problems. So now we're going to be in this place where, like, if we keep pushing that white space so quickly, how do human beings keep up? So that'll be an interesting new problem that we have, Will.
Yeah. No, that's it's a lot to wrap
blew your mind.
my mind.
Should I say natural language processing again for Garrett, or what do we think?
Yeah. No, I mean, it makes me think of it when I text you about book recommendations for this stuff, and you're like, they're probably not good because everything is moving so quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it'll be interesting. It's exciting. Yeah, a little bit unknown. So, what about another hot topic around all of this? Job creation. What does it look like? And when I had Nick on the show, he kind of hit me with a frame that made me think, okay, maybe it won't. But the more I dig into it, just for example, as a brokerage owner, if I have 10 track and trace reps, and then whatever, I can get AI to do it, and then just have one rep as the escalation point. I mean, that makes sense to me. So I do think it will take away more jobs than it creates. What's your stance on it?
So the story of technology since the beginning of human history, the history of Homo sapiens, has always been net job creation. When I say from the beginning of human history, Homo sapiens, I mean literally the discovery of fire, the harnessing of fire, and the invention of the plow. That far back, it always means net job creation. But what it does, but that doesn't tell the full story, it misses the nuance. It does sometimes mean job displacement, right? There are jobs that have existed throughout human history that don't exist anymore. When we had, when horses were the primary mode of transportation, there were people who walked around with carts and just shoveled shit. They were shit shovelers. How many of those people exist today?
Hey, I shoveled some shit on a horse farm for a couple.
Yeah, you're a freight broker. All you do is shovel shit all day. That's actually the joke.
Yeah,
so my point was, like, right when the Industrial Revolution started, for the first time, people had to work in different shifts, and there had to be people who knocked on windows. And then we invented the car, so we don't need shift shovelers anymore. We invented alarm clocks. We don't know those people walk on the windows anymore. And yet, unemployment is at the lowest it's ever been in the history of humanity. So it's impossible to say we haven't created jobs with technology. Yeah. And it has meant job displacement. The guy who knocked on the window, his job went away.
Yeah.
The guy who shoveled. So my point is, yes, the jobs as they exist right now, in their form and function right now, will go away. But there will be white space that's created. It is disingenuous to say AI is going to take your job. That's a lie. Let me just tell you, AI is going to take your job as it exists today. Our goal needs to be to reskill and upskill workers for the white space that is then created, right? So you're going to have, I'll give you actually a more specific example as it relates to transportation. So when before like I was listening to a podcast the other day that had Jay Gustafson. He's the EVP of sales and ops at Echo, and he's brilliant. He's a great guy. He was on the Vuma podcast, and it's a really good episode. And Jay's awesome. And he was talking about how, like, when he started his career, you didn't have cell phone tracking, right? Like, most drivers didn't even have cell phones, so like you didn't know when the load picked up or not, right?
Yeah.
And then cell phones come around. And then all of a sudden, it actually creates the need for a tracking department, right? Okay. And then digital tracking comes around. So you get Macro Point, right? Macro Point allows you to use GPS triangulation. Did that put track and trace departments out of business? No. It actually blew tracking departments up. It made them bigger. Because the expectation, the white space that was created by digital tracking was actually the expectation of tracking.
Yeah.
You go back to 2003, no one expected you to know where the truck was. No one expected you to know where the truck was. Generally speaking, they expected you to know that the truck picked up or whatever. But a shipper wasn't going to call and be like, hey, dude, where is this guy on a random Thursday on a 6-day transit, right? Or 4-day transit. But now you got to know, because the expectation is you'll know. And that same thing will happen with this technology. I don't know what the white space is, Will. So if you ask me what I don't know. If I knew that, I'd start a business that filled that white space. But I'll figure it out eventually. I'll probably figure it out before everybody else. But, that's just my gift. But it will absolutely create this white space. And then, so we need to get people ready for that white space once it gets created, right? Because it always does. When you make something more efficient, like we see this across technology, like with humans in consumption, when you make something more efficient, humans actually use more of that thing. Like raw materials is the same way. When people are better and more, like the more that we've made crude oil more efficiently refined and gasoline engines more efficient and diesel engines more efficient, we use more of that shit, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense intellectually when you explain it. I think it's counterintuitive. The knee-jerk reaction is AI is taking jobs. When you break it down, it does make sense. And then I don't know how much you know about population. I don't know a whole hell of a lot about it, but I have heard that population is a concern in the future, that we're not reproducing quick enough. And I wonder if this is kind of a good thing, right? If tech gets to a point where it's, hey, we don't really need all those people that we thought that we did need. I don't know. I have a lot of. That's
going to go down a rabbit hole. So so demography is something that I'm a person, I can find anything really fascinating. So I'll do these, like I'll meet somebody who's like an expert on something. And so one of my wife's best friends is actually a demographer. He has a PhD in that. And so that's actually a really interesting topic, but parts of the world we are not reproducing fast enough. Other parts of the world we are. So like there'll be a fundamental shift sort of like in the balance there. Also, this is going to go down a super rabbit hole. Shout out to some of my friends who will like freak out that I say this out loud. Society is actually a bit of a Ponzi scheme. So like we're actually going to, at some level that actually is going to create all kinds of other problems that actually have nothing to do with AI or technology, but anybody who's really interested in so I read science fiction because it helps me think about, like they're all very grounded in like real life. It may be kind of fanciful in some senses, but like the underlying problems help you explore human nature. Kurt Vonnegut has a book called Player Piano that was written, who knows? I don't even know when Kurt Vonnegut was alive, the 70s maybe, that actually touches on this idea about essentially like every job being automated and like what that meant for society and what that means for society. So it's something that could be really interesting to like check out and just use as a thought experiment of like, oh, this would be cool. But again, like at no point realistically, it creates white space. Like we're going to be able to do other things with our time, and we're going to do other things with our time. Again, we have to reskill people. Globalization is a great corollary for this. When we globalized the economy, right? The whole point of globalization was the job gets done in the best location for it get done, because like of cost and expense and all that other stuff. So then you saw like steel and coal and all that stuff went somewhere else, and we get that from somewhere else. And then the Rust Belt was impacted by that. Manufacturing the same way. Michigan, right? Like where I went to, the auto manufacturers shipped a lot of that manufacturing somewhere else because it was too expensive to do here in the US. And those people were displaced. Now, what we didn't do was reskill those people in ways that we could have or should have, right? But like, and I recognize that can be a bit of an oversimplification, but it's not, but that's certainly a part of it.
Yeah, no, from a macro level, it makes sense. It'll be interesting. I mean, interesting is an understatement, right? To see how all this plays out. I'm not in this space like you are with technology, but I like kind of watching from the sidelines, see what's going on, and kind of imagining what the future looks like, especially again the adoption, how quick, talking about that velocity. Fast forward 10 years, sitting here again, what does our day-to-day look like? So, man, lots of good thoughts, and And yeah, I'm sure I'll have a whole bunch of questions once we get off this call. But man, I really appreciate you taking the time to join me. And, yeah, I'm sorry that Matt bailed on us. That he's going through something with Bolivia.
That's okay, man. He just knew he didn't have the dog in him.
Yeah, he didn't have the dog.
He's like, I don't want to be out dogged. I don't want to be the Chihuahua with a bunch of Rottweilers. You know what I'm saying? Like,
that's a good point. Yeah, we'll put him in the dog pound.
Yeah, there you go. Certified not dog of the week this week.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna clip that part where you said life's like a Ponzi scheme. That's a good one.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, we can talk about that one offline. I got like lots of thoughts about how I didn't say life, I said society is basically a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah. Society's a Ponzi scheme. Well, yeah, no, I'll get with you offline. Awesome, man. Well, thanks again. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks for asking me, dude. This was fun. I mean, I spent most of the time talking, so of course it was fun for me, but
I mean, it was great. I like listening to you talk. So yeah, we'll have to do it again.
Yeah, man. Thanks a ton. We will.
Peace.